All right, well, thanks everybody for coming tonight to Horse Racing Nation's Super Screener, and have with us here Mike Shutty, the author of the Super Screener, and want to talk 2013 Kentucky Derby and talk Super Screener and pick your brain and find out who's really the horses that are really popping as we get into the last 48 hours before the race.
Yeah, looking forward to this opportunity to get more conversation around Super Screener, meet some people, and also I think raise questions that I'm sure a lot of those folks who are viewing in via the internet are thinking themselves. So we'll try to get a lot of those covered here tonight, really go deep into how the Super Screener came together, but more importantly, what do we think about this Kentucky Derby and the Super Screener results themselves?
Exactly, and Mike, we've talked about, the Super Screener's been around for almost 20 years now, and why don't you tell us, how'd you come up with this and how's it work so well?
Well, I think, as you all know, the Kentucky Derby is probably it's the most unique race I can think of, because you're asking a 3-year-old to do several things for the first time that they'll probably never do again in their racing career. So naturally they're running a mile and a quarter, at least most of these horses, for their first time ever. They're running in a field of 19 other rivals, as the fields have certainly expanded over the last several years. And then they also are running against very difficult conditions in terms of both pace, trips, and so on. And preparing over that season, all those preps, again, for a young horse, this is quite taxing. So I was trying to understand why traditional handicapping and the things we normally do in smaller fields just doesn't translate well. So I think we began the experiment by going back over 20 plus years of Kentucky Derby runnings, getting all the past performance together, the results charts, and then literally started looking at it horse by horse, trying to understand were there any patterns, looking at about 40 handicapping variables that separate those vulnerable favorites that went off as low-priced horses. In a Derby, literally anything under 10 to 1 is a low-priced horse. And why did those fail, and why did those at those prices, why did they succeed? Same thing for those long shots. Now in every Derby field, especially when you have about 20 horses, you're going to have 9, maybe sometimes 10 horses, like we will have this year, that are going off at 20 to 1 or more. So it makes a tremendous betting opportunity in terms of a race. Unfortunately, you have to bet a lot of tickets. It's very confusing for a lot of people. And there's a lot of uninformed money in the pools, which is what makes it such a tremendous opportunity for those who are more informed. So I think the goal was to get more informed around what are the real factors that contribute to success or failure in the Kentucky Derby. And we found these reoccurring patterns, these thresholds that have held up over time that are not your typical, like, well, it hasn't had a race since in 2000 or the present year, or I'm sorry, the prior year. Also, some of the other ones where you needed to have 2 races or 3 races preps. And of course, a couple of horses like Big Brown, Street Sets have broken that. You need a race in March, and there have been several horses now who've broken that. Can't win from post 20, Big Brown broke that. So if you would have stuck to some of the old, I guess, standbys, you would have lost a lot of good opportunity.
Definitely, definitely. You've got to have something that's flexible, and you've got to really weed out the rules that are going to stand the test of time.
And that's what's beautiful. Every year, we get more data. We can adjust, we can calibrate. But what's been really interesting is that it really holds up. There have been very few real adjustments over time. So that's a sign that we've probably found the proper thresholds.
Absolutely. So we want to get to it, but the first thing I got to ask you before we get into all this is, I've read the Super Screener. Everybody else is, a lot of them have got it. They've read the Super Screener. They're excited about it, and we all want to know, how much confidence can we have in this? We go to the windows. It's had some great success, we know, but tell us, how confident are you?
Well, you know what? The Super Screener kind of tells me the level of confidence, and the way it does it is, if I see a lot of horses that are all meeting the criteria, or none of them meet the criteria, those have been the most difficult years.
Right.
And we've had a few of those, 2009, 2010, and 2012, it was quite marginal. But in some of those cases, there were some horses that just didn't meet all the criteria. This year, it's very different. We have 4 horses that have met all their criteria, and there are about 6 horses that literally met none. So there's real good separation from the top and bottom. That middle part is always murky, but if we can get that kind of separation, the confidence goes up.
Seems like a really big wagering opportunity if you can really start separating the top from the bottom and know where to put them,
exactly.
Put the emphasis on.
Yep.
Well, why don't we really get into it? Why don't we go horse by horse and just kind of walk through the field and tell us what you think, and we'll kind of dive into it.
Good. First one up is Black Onyx, another one, again, trying to make that jump from synthetic to the dirt course. It seems like this horse does favor a synthetic surface. I don't think dirt's impossible, but quite literally, as you go through all the super screener criteria, especially when you're looking at the pace, the speed rating thresholds, and the combination of that, really comes up short. This could be a good horse, I think, in the fall, especially in synthetics or turf. You know, been off for quite a while, and if you look at his prior races, he seems to do much better when he's had a race or two under his belt. So when he gets that that one hole, now I know the first post has gotten a lot of knock lately. In fact, over history, it really hasn't been a bad post position unless the field is 20 horses. And what happens is you watch a Derby, head on. It's bad enough when you have 14 horses. When you have 20, they're coming in off that auxiliary grade, which literally pushes the field to the left. So if you don't sprint out of that first hole, you're either going to get shuffled back or at least get crushed.
You can ask looking at Lucky what he thought of another one hole on Derby Day, on a muddy Derby Day, and how that worked out.
What was the other Arc? Was the other one?
Yeah, Arch Warrior.
Yeah, those. Yep.
Arch, I think it was. Yep. So all right, so Black Onyx is one we can throw out with confidence. Not really even considered nothing really to worry about there. What number 2? We've got Oxbow, Dwayne Lucas, 30-1.
Yeah, Oxbow was a little fuzzy. Going to move up. Track's going to be sloppy. I don't think there's any question about it now. Weather Channel now is calling for 90% probability. It's pretty high. I think they're confident, and up to about 2 inches of rain. So, and happening right during the Derby card. It's not one of those where it might miss us or hit early. So it's going to come up, and we're going to have a lot of moisture at the track. This horse moves up as a result. Now the challenge is he's in the 2-hole. Going to have to move pretty good coming out of that 2-hole because all of the other speed is to his outside. Never a favorable condition.
So they're sitting on go. They're just they're coming right out of there. Okay.
And Lucas was committed to go. Yeah. We're not going to take him back.
Okay. So we know where it's going to be. Is he going to be a factor at the end?
No. I think we'll have this horse take, like many of the horses here will, they'll run a good race for a mile. And then you'll see him, like some of the other more faint-hearted speedsters, start backing up. His Rebel Stakes was certainly one of his, clearly one of his best races. But one of the key super screener criteria is you can't have a horse that's going back and forth, up and down, sharp between different preps.
Right.
In this case, a brisk speed rating of 10 plus points or more. That pattern is absolutely a key separator. There are no violators of that rule over the last 19 years, and there's some that have come close, but the 10 points is really the breakoff point.
Yeah, so,
and he's one of the violators.
So a lot of questions, a great, pretty great Rebel, poor Arkansas Derby, up and down, just toss.
Yep, and if we think the tracks have come up and it was money last time as a closer track, that's going to hurt him as well.
Yeah, good. Okay, so let's move on. Number 3, we've got Revolutionary Louisiana Derby winner, 10-1.
Going to be pounded the windows. We can also see from taking up the consensus picks from all of our bloggers on Horse Racing Nation that Revolutionary actually may end up being the top horse.
Wow.
And we wouldn't be surprised to see this one go off as certainly the 3rd favorite, and maybe even the 2nd favorite when it's all said and done. Because local hero, local favorite, and the crowd knows that, and they hit his horses pretty hard. So there'll be no value, I think, relatively speaking, compared to other horses in the field as a result. Passed most of the super screener criteria, has done nothing wrong. A little bit of a head case, but it seems like he's settled pretty well coming here into Kentucky. And he's been showing some really nice workouts. Super screener has him as a marginal win contender, but a real deep threat, hitting the board in the money. So
right around 5th, 6th choice, somewhere in there?
Yes, he's I think right now number 5.
Okay.
Yep.
And but like you said, not quite a good value. He's 10-1 morning line, could end up going off about 7, 6, lower than that, and not a lot of value in this wide open race.
Can't leave him off your tickets. My only fear is if he goes to the rail. And right now, if you've watched some of the Churchill races, it can certainly change by Saturday. But the rail has not been the place to be. So if Calvin takes the rail and it gets deep with moisture, and he's in the middle of the pack, I think there are a lot of horses going to be stacked up on the side there with the mid-pack pressers. He might not have room.
Yeah, he's Calvin gets tough on that rail though. You know, he gets in there, he finds the good
Finds
spot
his
on the
little
rail.
holes.
He goes, I think, a few extra feet closer to the rail than the other jockeys dare go, but that's interesting.
He's got the right kind of horse who can dart, like Animal Kingdom could, you know, move in and out of horses. So he at least has the right animal.
Okay. So moving on, real interesting one. A horse that Golden Soul at number 4 at 50 to 1. A horse that probably a lot of people aren't paying really any attention to, but you say we should pay attention to this horse.
Yeah, last minute entry, because there's so many Kentucky Derbies where people will rule this horse out. And he's a closer. They'll rule the horse out solely because if you look at his past performances, a lot of other horses in this field have beaten this horse in the prior preps, the Risen Star and the Louisiana Derby,
right,
which are coming up as very key prep races as it appears coming into this Derby. So Golden Soul, though, all he does in those races is pass a lot of tired horses. Well, guess what? At 1.25 miles, there are going to be a lot more tired horses.
Okay.
And if you look back in history, the 4th place spot in the Superfecta is just dominated by these kind of horses that go off at 30 to 1 or more and just simply keep running while others are stopped.
30 to 1. What's Golden Soul going to go off on Saturday?
Yeah, I mean
80 to 1.
I think the 51 is probably a little bit under.
I think so. So that would be huge. I mean, if you got him in 4th in your Super at 60, 70, 80 to 1, that'd be a massive payoff, even with some of the favorites on top.
And you know the connections are going to just say, hey, look, he's in the 4-hole, take the horse back,
yep,
just let him run, and then just make that one big 4 furlong run at the end, period, on the outside. Going to pass. He's definitely a top half of the field. There's no question about that.
Interesting, interesting.
And he's the only horse in the Super Screener to meet the most critical criteria, which is you've got to run, you got to be close and in contact toward the end of the race,
right,
and then you've got to run real steady, strong numbers, again, without accelerating or decelerating too much.
He's kind of stamina just to keep plowing through.
Stamina grind.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's interesting. And so, well, okay, so now that being said, how high would you go with Golden Soul on some tickets?
I tell you what, in the Super Screeners you'll see on some of our wagers, he's definitely made the 3 and 4 holes on trifectas and superfectas, and on a few we even popped him in the 2-hole, but primarily the 4th hole in the superfecta.
Awesome. Okay, that's one to look for. And then what about a muddy track with Golden Soul? Just real quick.
It doesn't seem to literally help or hurt the horse,
okay,
so I think we're going to be okay on that front. And again, if it's one of those like we had when Super Saver and Icebox came in, where it was just closers all day from the outside, well, that just plays into his hands.
That's true. Yeah, yeah, and that's a tough thing with a sloppy track, is it can turn.
You don't know which way it could be.
Fast, it could be closing, but Churchill gets to be a little deep, so we'll see if it ends up being a closing derby. All right, so number 5, we move on to a real interesting one, Normandy Invasion at 12 to 1, Chad Brown.
Yeah, I'm almost actually both Super Screener and personally surprised he's 12 to 1. Don't know if that's where he'll end up
wow,
in terms of the Derby. And he's sort of become the wise guy horse, and there's always those kinds of horses every year, and they typically don't do well. However, this animal seems to be pretty special in terms of just literally hit all the Super Screener criteria out of the park. We had to throw out that
Risen Star.
Risen Star race.
Horrible trip.
Just an absolute horrible trip. But we've done that for other horses, so in all fairness. And he has been unlucky for sure. But if you watch all 3 of his good races, his replays, this horse is just an incredible animal, and here's why. Most horses can run really fast for 2 furlongs. And there will be a lot of closers who are going to run really fast for 2 furlongs, but they're typically too far back to make an impact on the win spot.
Right.
He runs fast for 4 furlongs. And in a Derby, that's going to be key. And I think you interviewed his trainer this morning, and what did he say about Normandy Invasion?
It was pretty funny. So we talked to Chad Brown this morning, and we were peppering with different questions, and they said, well, as far as pedigree, people have questioned the Boston Harbor, and does he have a sprinter's pedigree that can't go 1.25 miles? He looked at me firmly and said, this horse will go 1.5 miles. And that video's up on Horse Racing Nation. You can watch that. But very, very confident in his horse. And Chad Brown trains a lot of 1.5 mile turf horses, so he's a guy that I think knows how to get a horse to get the distance around.
And I think that Remsen Stakes, just watch that video, and I think you'll see what the Super Screener had seen in this horse.
Awesome. Okay.